On the March edition of Historic Racing News, we recap Race Retro 2026.
With some cars in auction, they're grey. What I mean by grey is you might have 4 or 5 people and you're trying to get to a reserve price and those people are bidding, and that's what I would call a grey situation. It'll either happen or it won't, and hopefully we'll get to reserve, but there's people there. With a competition car, it's a black and white situation, so you've either got a buyer in the room or on the phone, or you've got nobody.
And for a truly huge prize, how about a trip to the Monaco Historic Grand Prix?
If I could pick one race to watch in a year, it would be the 70s and 80s F1 cars around Monaco on that Sunday afternoon, because you can't get anything better than listening to V8s, V10s and V12s, and the sound reverberates around the Principality as well, because you're so closed in.
Welcome to Historic Racing News, where motorsport history lives on. This is your front row seat to the golden age of speed. Here is your host, Paul Tarsi.
Greetings, and welcome to the March edition of the Historic Racing News podcast. What a show we have for you. This month we've got interviews that we picked up at Race Retro, plus the biggest ever prize that we have had on the show. Twynhams Tours have given us 2 hospitality tickets to view the Monaco Historique Grand Prix from their very own fully catered and wonderful apartment overlooking Sainte-Dévote at the Monaco circuit. And we'll have details of that later on. Matt.
Wow.
That is something, isn't it?
Are we eligible to enter?
No.
Oh.
No. But you better have your wits about you, ladies and gentlemen, because the show goes out as we know, and you get your entries in 7 days' time. So you need to get them in by the 11th of March at 5 p.m. UK time. Race Retro was a huge success, and the organisers, exhibitors, visitors, and us, we all had a great time. Can you have a gruesome threesome? I don't think you can.
Oh, but, stretching it.
Yeah, probably is. But certainly the gruesome twosome of Paul Jerd and Jim Roller are with me. And we've got some very special guests on the show as well. Now, looking back to Race Retro, Paul Jerd, you've been there many times, but it's kind of evolving, isn't it? It's growing into something much, much bigger.
It is, yeah. I thought it was actually a nice step up this year. So maybe, an obvious reaction to the loss of Autosport International, but also as you went through the halls, you didn't end up with what was essentially a cattle shed. We had that Hall 2A, I think it was labelled, wasn't it? Which is where a lot of the other stuff was. And yeah, I thought that was quite nice. And also there were just some quite impressive stands, including from some companies, who were at Race Retro, who you would normally have expected to have been at that former NEC event, which would happen about 3 or 4 weeks earlier. You had some very, very technical vendors, people supplying fuel cells, right down to that sort of specifics. The sort of people you would have had in that industry section at Autosport International. And Demon Tweaks were there. And Autosport International's, their stand at that show was always a magnet for everyone. It's where people started their season because they suddenly realised their gloves, their helmet, their boots was now out of date or whatever, and they needed something to go racing. So nice to see them there. But we saw people like Caterham were there, and also Radical, not a company that you would have associated with what was not that long ago, firmly a very, very historic angled show. And also Radical actually had some of their global management certainly on 2 of the 3 days. I don't think I walked past on the other to be sure if they were there. So they were taking it very, very seriously. And of course you just had so many organising bodies. It was like, alphabet spaghetti. We had the BARC, the HSCC, the BRSCC, the CSCC, Equipe Classic Racing, ECR, and of course Motorsport UK, and ample more. And what I really liked about this is it really felt actually such an inclusive show, because you would go there and it had everything. It had a grass track. I've never seen grass track cars at a show before. Fantastic to see them. Hill climbing, rallycross, so many circuit racing options, right up to the Formula 1 cars that were on display. And it really was sort of that inclusive. It was none of this, oh no, we don't cover that. They obviously were trying to get everyone in. And it was, I thought, a great reminder of that broad spectrum of motorsport in this country, and also quite what an industry club motorsport actually is. There must be thousands of people every weekend heading to a circuit to do something or other. And I really just hope Race Retro got that through its doors. But, if anything, my one comment about it is I'm no longer sure that name fits. That Race Retro.
I was just going to ask you that.
Good point.
I think, if anything, it's become the club motorsport show, and I don't see that as a bad thing. We have this huge club motorsport scene in there, so why not celebrate it?
Well, there's something that we need to talk to Clarion Events about, and maybe, just maybe, they're having that same conversation somewhere in their headquarters. Girola, it was your first visit to Race Retro, and was it what you expected?
Fully. It was an extremely well-run event, and there's truly, as Paul said, there was truly something there for everyone, whether you were looking to re-up your license, get your medical exam done for the season, if you needed equipment, if you just wanted to go around and talk to organizers, that sort of stuff. It was all there. And if you're just a punter and you love motorsport, there was plenty of there for you as well. There were model stands and bookshops and all kinds of great stuff. And each hall had its own kind of vibe and feel. And of course, you had the live stuff outside. You had vintage go-karts, but of course, the star of the show's got to be that rally stage. Absolutely fantastic. The cars on display were cool. More about that a little bit later in the show. But it was probably the displays were the only thing that were not as big as what I thought. And when I say big, I mean numerous. I expected to see, based on video that I've seen in the past, of a few more cars. But the cars that were there were real quality. And so it was neat to see some of that. And of course, the talk motorsport stage was fun. And for me, it was a lot of fun to get to meet some folks who are listeners of the podcast. And to those of you that came up and said hello, thank you very much. It was great to meet you. And they didn't run the American off, which given some of my comments in the past, it's they don't stop me at the border yet. So
Yep. As we talked about with Andrea Seed in the last show, you're still getting away with smuggling bacon. So
interesting. Now, very interesting. I did not do that this time, and thank God I didn't. There was a big delay in customs. I know that's a big shock for Americans that might be listening to this because what's going on over here. We don't talk politics, but that's a fact. There's stuff going on with border and customs control. There were actually 3 different beagles sniffing luggage.
bacon beagles.
Bacon beagles. They had to be. Certainly couldn't be dope drugs. Dope dogs. No, they had to be bacon dogs.
They are.
So yeah. So I'm glad. I've kind of curtailed that little bit of It's a little outlaw in me, but not that bad. Yeah.
So I just have visions of you at customs and them saying, "Have you got any cocaine in your luggage, Mr. Roller?" Nope. Have you got any bacon? Oh yeah, right. Hands on the wall.
All I'd have to say is, officer, have you ever had American bacon? I mean, come on.
And there was obviously the iconic auction as well, which we're going to talk about. And that was quite something, wasn't it?
It was, and it was probably for me one of the more interesting aspects of the auction of the event. It had its own hall, and I got to tell you, folks, you'll be able to go on YouTube on HRN Chronicles later this month and see some of the video from the auction. Paul, I don't think they could have got another car in that hall. I mean, it was next. You're going to have to start stacking them. They had almost 1,000 lots this year between memorabilia, competition cars and collector cars, and for the first time ever, motorcycles. So this was their biggest ever event. And we spoke last month about the great success at Meekham's Kissimmee auction, with over $600 million in gross sales on the heels. And this auction event at Stoneleigh was on the heels of the kickoff of the European auction season in Paris at Retromobile, where sales topped $181.5 million. That's 134.6 million pounds, which was a record. It was nearly a 50% gain over 2025. So expectations for Iconic were high as we took a look at the 2026 Race Retro offering. And when we spoke to Nick Whale from Iconic beforehand, he was cautiously optimistic.
I know it sounds strange, but the market in the UK has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the market in the States. I've always hoped it did, because I like to read in January the results of these sales and get excited about the year ahead. But life has taught me there is no correlation at all. Even these days, there is little correlation between Europe and the UK. And I know that sounds slightly odd, but because of Brexit and all the different taxes that apply in the classic car world, you can have a strong European situation and a weak UK, or vice versa, strong UK and a weak Europe. So there's little correlation. So it's kind of a unique market now, more unique than ever. And what I think it reflects here in the UK is, as ever, it's all about the cars. And certain cars now are aging. The demographic that buys them are aging. And it's a sort of, the wheel of time and value is starting to correspond. So what I'm trying to say is, cars from the 50s, 60s, and even the 70s now are quite hard work, because the younger demographic don't want to buy them, and it's literally a dying audience. But cars from the 80s are coming on strong. Well, have already come on strong. 90s are coming on strong, and of course the early 2000s and so on, because that's now 25 years ago. And the diversity and range of cars in that period is much, much broader. In the 50s and 60s there was X amount of cars, but as time has gone on, the range and diversity has widened substantially. And I think that that's very relevant, because people now, the poster cars that people are in the market to buy, the poster they had in their bedroom is the latest stuff, So it's evolving.
That's an interesting observation. We're starting to see some of the pundits in America talk about that as well. It's starting to affect the American market, as is things like tariffs that you don't think about. Part of the reason that the Meekham had such a great sale was they had 46 Ferraris that they were able to auction from one single collection, and it was cars that you could buy without tariff. So that was a big jump. Do you see the markets don't correlate, but do the buyers correlate at all? I mean, are European buyers Europeans and not Americans, and vice versa? And here in the UK, with your events here, do you see, is it that nationalized?
Well, we are an international auction house, and we do sell cars to the States, and we do sell cars to Japan, and we do sell cars to Australia. But that's not our core market. That's maybe 10 to 15% of our sales. Our core market, 80-85% of our sales, is really UK, if I'm honest. What has disappeared, funnily enough, the global market of people that we sell to is fairly static, even post-Brexit. But the European market that we sell to has gone away completely because of Brexit, because of the 5% tax or the 10% tax, or the, it depends on the age of the car, is what I'm trying to say, is what the tax is.
Yeah.
So the European, we used to have a few Germans, a few French, a few Dutch, a few Belgians come along or bid online or whatever. That's gone. They just don't come now. Yeah.
Does that force you to do more events in Europe as a company?
Well, No, the opposite really, because it's complicated. As much as it's complicated for them to buy a car here, it's equally as complicated for us to hold an auction. Brexit wrecked everything basically. So we tend to have become a little bit more British specific.
Okay.
But what we have done is we've expanded our events program. So we try to go as far north, east, south and west as we can with our events to capture the whole of the UK. But we are much more UK focused than we've ever been for the reasons I've just outlined. And it's a shame because even I suspect if they ease the taxes on some of these classic cars, the fact is the momentum has gone out of that sector, the Europe to Britain and that there is this sort of impression that it's going to be difficult and complicated to bring a car in or out of the EU.
What is the market like? I'd like to break it down because you do competition cars and you do what I'll call, for lack of a better term, street cars. What's the market like currently for competition cars? What do you see coming? Is that same rule applying that the 250 GT that won Ferrari 250 GT that won Le Mans and might have hung on my colleague Paul Tarsi's wall is different from the Audi Quattro that hung on my wall?
No, I think actually that's not the case. The collector market, which is what we call I think you call them street cars, we call it the collector market because we're snobs. I'm just ignorant. The things I've said are relevant to that market. The competition market is a different thing altogether because with a competition car, it doesn't matter what age or period it is, it's just about on the day have you got a buyer. And they're black and white in an auction. With some cars in auction, they're grey. What I mean by grey is you might have 4 or 5 people and you're trying to get to a reserve price and those people are bidding, and that's what I would call a grey situation. It'll either happen or it won't, and hopefully we'll get to reserve, but there's people there. With a competition car, it's a black and white situation. So you've either got a buyer in the room or on the phone, or you've got nobody. If you think about competition cars for a minute, there's so few people that want to buy that specific car.
Sure.
That 1963 Mini that's a certain specification with a certain engine in a certain colour. You're talking about a tiny, tiny, weeny market. So competition cars, in my experience, we always aim in the general classic market for a 75% sales rate as a minimum. In a competition car sale, we have a party if we get 50%.
Wow!
Because you found, you've got 1 in 2 cars away in that very tiny niche market. So my team don't like the competition, or some of them don't like the competition cars because it lowers our overall sales rate.
Well, sure.
And it makes us look a bit underperforming in the market. But the fact is, nobody else does it.
Right.
And that's why we do it. Because we're the only people with the enthusiasm and I have to say the expertise.
Right.
I say that because I'm not talking about myself, but several of our team are ex-racing drivers, ex-rally drivers. I'm also an ex-race and rally driver, or I'm a current historic driver. So there's a lot of expertise, there's a lot of knowledge, and we enjoy the competition cars, but they are much harder to sell.
Do you endeavor to? So if I've got an old Formula One car, let's say, and I bring it to you to sell, do you then help me go out and find people that might be interested to come to the auction? I mean, is that part of your remit once you take that car on as a consignment, you're going to have to go out and dig up some buyers, hopefully more than one, so you can get them to bid against each other?
Yeah, more than one always helps. That's what we do.
Okay.
That is, if you put it in a nutshell, what are we good at? We're good at marketing. And the reason we're good at marketing is because we subscribe to websites all over the world. So we financially pay out hard cash, maybe as much as £250,000 a year, certainly over 200,000 a year, to be on all these key websites around the world, including America, so that we are promoting and advertising. So when you put a competition car or a road car on our website, it's not just going to whoever our audience is, it's going around the globe. I'm trying to remember the name of the American company. It's just gone out of my head that we put all the competition cars on.
Oh,
but you'll know it.
Is it Racer or?
It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, I'll come back to that in a minute. So all the big websites around the world we subscribe to, and promoting and marketing the cars is what we're good at. Remembering names is not what we're good at.
Yeah. Now on the collector car side, one of the things that you were talking about earlier is the demographic is getting younger. Therefore, the cars themselves are getting younger. How is the financial market for that? Because, demographically, most people will tell you that the money in most any economy, and certainly it is in the United States, is in the folks that are 35 to 55.
Yeah.
But one of the most coveted marketing groups is the 18 to 35, because the thought is once you get them hooked in, you'll keep them through their formative years and their affluent years before they get into retirement. How is it in the collector car market?
Well, it's similar. The key market is 35 to 55. You just said it yourself. That's the demographic that's usually got the money and is usually out there buying. And that's my point about aging. The guy who's, let's say, 50, for argument's sake, he's not going to remember a car from the 1960s or 70s. He's going to remember a car from the 80s onwards. So that's really my point. In terms of the young money want the modern. What's happening now in the modern market is Ferrari and McLaren and Porsche bring out these amazing limited edition cars, and the young market, not all of them obviously, but a good portion is bought by the young successful market who are really into that, and they've got to have what they've got to have. If you take a Ferrari Enzo, for example, that's a 20-year-old car now. 2-3 years ago I was with a collector, and he was saying to me, should I take 300,000 for my Enzo? And I said to him, well, that's the market today. If you need to sell it, that's where it's at. But, it could well go up. Well, they're 3 million quid today. 5 years later, because all of a sudden you've got to have an F40, you've got to have an Enzo, you've got to have the LaFerrari. The LaFerrari. We're only going back 3 years with that 4 years. The LaFerrari was 1.5 million for forever. When it came out, they didn't go. Now they're 4 million quid.
Right.
And that's just changed in the last 12-18 months.
All the Bugattis, all the
exactly. So there is young money, and there is people that want what is the latest thing, and particularly cars that are obviously limited in supply. There was a very small number of Enzos made. There was 600 LaFerraris made. So that's why they are fetching the money they're fetching. Carrera GT, I can tell you, to my extreme sadness, I couldn't get 300,000 for my Carrera GT when I sold it. I had one new. And now they're 3 million. It's just the way the croissant crumbles. But they're made in very small numbers, and they're very desirable modern supercars. Mine was 2003, so that's 23 years ago. So that is now a classic car.
Yeah. Isn't that's always scary?
If only we knew at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So here at Race Retro, what are some of your highlights? What are you expecting to hopefully have some success with? Let's start with the competition side.
Well, for me, it's not about a car. As the owner of the auction company, it's about the sales rate, and it's about satisfying the market and happy customers. So if we get a 50% or higher rate on the competition cars, I'm a happy man. If on the road cars we're over 75%, I'm a happy man.
Okay.
And if we can get everything delivered logistically without hiccups, without losing history files, without scratching cars, when you've got this number of lots, and you said at the beginning it's close to 1,000 lots, if we can get close to 1,000 lots delivered without having to, without having to go through the experience, it's quite a logistical challenge. So those are the things that will make me a happy man, is sales rates and delivery and customer satisfaction. But in terms of an individual car, which I think is what you're really hooking for, is there a car that's got my heart? I'm going to be bidding on 2 cars in this auction, and I'm not telling you what they are till after the auction.
Well, I've always, as Paul will tell you, and both Pauls, Paul Jerd, I'm kind of the rally guy because I did some rallying in the States, and so I'm always interested in the rally cars. And this year you have quite a few, and I've seen in the international market some of the rally cars have done a little bit better. Are we starting to see some of the cars that are coming up doing well, or are people just sitting on them? Like the Group B cars, they're hard to find.
Group B cars are a unique market and they're very special, but I can tell already that my Ford Escort rally car over there, as you walk in, it's definitely a car you should be looking at and buying. It's got your name all over it. Can't believe it.
Ladies and gentlemen, he did tell you he was a marketer.
But no, the question is that are the niche cars? Well, obviously anything that's appeared on the world stage in rallying or racing is special. And Group B, that applies to very much indeed, because they were all works cars. I don't think there were hardly any privateer cars. So they have their own little thing. But what we've tried to do here this weekend is to offer general competition cars. So you can buy a Ford Anglia for 10 grand. You can buy there's a Renault 5 Turbo for 12 grand. That were competition cars in the day, 20, 30 years ago, whatever. And there are historic cars. I mean, there's 3 cars here that are eligible for Monaco. So if you're into a single-seater and you want to race at Monaco, there are cars here you can buy. They're obviously a lot more money. But my point I'm trying to explain is we're offering a wide variety, and that's the appeal. I think we have to do that. We can't sit in a niche area. It'd be very nice for me to have nothing less than 100 grand, but I'd have 6 cars in the auction.
Yeah.
So we want variety, and we want people, and we want to sell cars and build it. That's what we're here to do. And we're event content these days as well.
Right, sure.
We're part of the event, and if we've got to look good, and we've got to sell cars, and we've got to offer interesting things.
On the collector car side, is there a bread and butter kind of genre or car that is kind of that, like for instance at Mecum, muscle cars are kind of their thing. That's what they're known for. Is there a bread and butter kind of car for you, a bell cow as we would call it, the genre of car? I know there's not looking for a specific, but like, are we talking about Mondeos and that sort of stuff, or what kind of cars are the collectors looking for now?
Well, you see, here in the UK, we have more interesting cars than you do in the States.
Yes, you do. Guilty as charged.
No, I'm trying to be funny, but the truth is that...
you're being honest, which is okay, too.
The truth is that there's a lot of niches. There's a lot of niches in the UK classic car market. So there isn't a go-to thing. Have you got an X? Everybody's got an X. There isn't an X. So people, are individual. The cars are individual. You tend to find people know a lot about a TVR, or they know a lot about an E-Type, or they know a lot about minis, or whatever it is. And that's their thing. Obviously, you get collectors who have a wider range, but in general terms, there's not a go-to classic, really. And even if there was, it's changing, as I said, with this evolving, because there was a stage where minis, E-Types and whatever were the sort of staple, MGBs, that kind of thing, were the staple diet of the British classic car market. But that's not really the case now, because if you've got something nichey and different, that seems to be more appealing than the mass-produced car.
Well, guys, we heard Nick there say that their expectations were guarded, and they blew things away. They had a 59% sell-through rate. Nick said that 50% would be good. They had 59% sell-through rate, over £2 million worth of sales. The top seller was a 1987 Renault Turbo 5. It was an ex-Eric Comas car for 331,000 pounds. There was a beautiful Chevron, 1970 Chevron Cosworth B16 that sold for just under 130,000 pounds. And of course, there was an 87 Metro R64 that sold for just over 103,000 pounds. But it was the collector cars, the street cars, that really blew everybody away. 93% sell-through rate. They knocked it out of the ballpark. The top seller was a 1998 Subaru Impreza 22B that nearly got to 200,000 pounds. It topped out at just over 187,000 pounds. And a Di Tommaso Pantera for 180,000 pounds. And a street version of the great Lancia Delta HF Integrale Evo 2 sold for 138,333 pounds. Now, you know, we've talked a lot in the past about how the market is shifting from what, you know, perhaps guys like us, you know, let's face it, we're of an age demographic that's a little bit older, had on their wall, as opposed to what the buyers today had on their wall. And nothing speaks to that more than this. When was the last time that you would have thought that a Subaru Impreza would outsell a 911 Carrera 2.7 liter MFI? So it's granted it was a 1974, not the great 1973 vintage, but still a 1974 Carrera 2.7 liter only sold for 135,000 pounds. So that was that's pretty telling about how the market is shifted. And then with the motorcycles, nearly 1 million pounds worth of motorcycles sold. Now, one bike that Paul Tarsi and I got to watch not sell, unfortunately, it was 82% sell-through rate, was a 2020 Aprilia Grand Prix bike that was the bidding got to almost 250,000 pounds. You and I were looking at each other like, wow, but unfortunately, that bike didn't sell.
I hadn't realized that it didn't sell. I thought we had witnessed nearly £250,000 change hands, but
the total volume for the entire show was over £7 million, probably close to $8.5 million. So congratulations to the guys at Iconic, and as you might expect, Mr. Whale was quite pleased when I talked to him on Sunday morning. Saturday for the Iconic auctioneers looked, to my eye, from looking through the website, to be a pretty good day. Am I correct in that assumption?
You're absolutely correct in that assumption. Yeah, we've been doing this event 14 years, and the UK market is a pretty unique little bubble. But we have sold £1.5 million worth of competition cars at some 60% of those that we consign, which we're proud of, because competition cars are generally a little harder work, so we're over the moon with that. And we sold 90% of the road cars at 3.5 million hammer, so about 4 million with premium. So, you know, to come here and conduct a sale that's the thick end of 5 3/4, £6 million worth of goods, including automobilia, is great. It's a really good sign for the market generally. It's a good sign for us, obviously, and it's a good sign for enthusiasts that their cars and their pride and joy, their motorbikes, whatever it be, are still wanted.
Is that a record for this event?
Yes. Yeah.
I think we talked earlier about Kissimmee, $600 million, a new record, everything else.
Yeah.
And we've talked about market trends being soft. How encouraging is this, really, given what we've been seeing for the last 18 months?
It's very encouraging, because what seems to be happening is people are accepting that values have dropped. I mean, we can't disguise the fact values have dropped. But the fact is that everybody's now operating again at that new level. So buyers are buying and sellers are selling, and the market's found its level. So the turmoil that perhaps has existed here in the UK seems to now be settling down.
Could it be also a little bit of, because those prices are down, you might be getting some new blood coming in going, I can afford to join the game?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. I think that's the case, yeah.
Thanks. Congratulations. Hope today goes as well.
Thank you very much. It's a nice broad smile you got here.
You too.
You're listening to Historic Racing News, where motorsport's history lives.
Now, I told you that we had an unbelievable prize for you this month. And a couple of days ago, I spoke to Matt Twynham. Matt is the man behind Twynhams Tours, and he told me a bit about what the Twynhams Tours company does. And, of course, he talked to me about this fantastic prize. Here in the UK, we are incredibly lucky, not only with the amount of race circuits, which is quite considerable, but the sheer volume of historic motorsport that we can enjoy, from Thruxton to Castle Combe in the south and Croft and Alton Park in the north. Pretty well every track promotes some kind of historic weekend. Now, to be honest, some are better than others, and we're spoilt by Goodwood, which promotes what is arguably the greatest racing event in the world at Revival. But we shouldn't ignore some of the amazing things that happen in Europe, and my next guest is working hard at bringing the opportunity to visit what might be the 3 biggest weekends on the European calendar to us Brits. Matt Twynham runs Twynhams Tours and joins me now. Matt, welcome, and thank you for coming on the show. Which came first, the love of historic racing events or the travel business?
Morning, Paul. Thanks for having me on the show. The motorsport was in my family from my granddad. I mean, my granddad used to race cars back in the 50s, and then obviously that passed down to my father, who was involved in motorsport, and I had no chance. So, I mean, when apparently my earliest visit to Silverstone was when I was 6 months old. I don't remember it, but I don't know. It's 1968 British Grand Prix. I can't remember. I wouldn't even know who won it, but apparently, I was there in a pram, and that was it. Probably with tiny little ear defenders on, if they even bothered with that back in '60s. They probably didn't actually.
No.
Scarred for life. And then so I've followed motorsport since I was a child. Senna, Mansell, Prost, all these people, and I've never competed until recently. But I've always been a massive fan. And then in 2006, I went along to what is the Silverstone Classic. I think it was probably the Coys Historic back then.
Yeah.
And I bought some really cheap hospitality on eBay, I think, at the time. And I went along for the day, and I had a really kind of average experience. It wasn't great. and I sat on the balcony in the afternoon, and I was watching the cars go by, and I thought to myself, how hard can this be? And so I thought, right, I'm going to do this. So I spoke to Silverstone. I rented a hospitality box, and then I realised it's very hard. Hospitality is a really difficult industry if you've never done it before. And tying hospitality into motorsport was a whole different genre as well, very niche. And so off it went, and it's fair to say that it's been a roller coaster. With all sorts of goings on at Silverstone and all these places, and also then we had things like the financial crash, we had COVID, it's 20 years next year, still here, still going, but it's been a journey. It's been a journey, yeah. But I still love it.
Did you have a background in hospitality, or was that something completely new?
No, it was zero. I was in the IT industry. And
oh goodness,
yeah, and I'd literally never made, I'd make a cup of coffee for someone in the office, and that was it. I'd never done it from a retail perspective before. And I remember I created this little spreadsheet with what my profit was going to be at the end of the year, and I hadn't taken into account the catering, I hadn't taken into account the drinks. So unsurprisingly, at the end of the first year, I made a loss. So I did what every rational businessman does, and at the end of the first year, I doubled the number of suites we'd got, and also moved to Donington as well. So I had 3 suites instead of 1. So the second year, I just lost more money. So in year 3, I thought, okay, what could possibly go wrong now? So I added another suite, and and I just about broke even at the end of year three. And it's kind of gone from there, really, and then we moved into sort of multi-night tours in 2016, rather than just doing hospitality. So that's when we started. The very first one we did was the Mille Miglia back in 2016. Yeah.
Well, talking of the Millimedia, I mean, that's something different again. I've only ever done it once. When I say done it, I mean watched it once, and that must be such a nightmare to take people to, because it's all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, the trickiest part of it is actually the fact that the organisers don't announce the route until October. So for the October for the following June. So you've kind of got to make a lot of guesses in terms of hotels and dates, because they don't announce the dates either, frustratingly. But
so we're not going to tell you where it is or when it is.
Yeah. And in the meantime, I'm planning a tour. But I've got over the 10 years of doing it, I've kind of built up the relationships with the Italian suppliers. So we now have the hotels in the right locations, and we know roughly what the dates are going to be. And the hotels are great, so they reserve 3 weeks for me. And then we go, right, okay, it's this date, and it's all blocked. So I've been working with all those suppliers for 10 years, and I think that's where our relationship comes in. It's like any business, isn't it? It's not just the customer relationship. In our industry, the supplier relationship is just as important. But in terms of an event, I wouldn't miss it. I mean, it's the one everybody wants to go to for good reason. You're talking 420 odd of the best classic cars in the world. And not just that, the Italians have absolutely no concept of health and safety. So and that's what I love. So we sit there at the start of the race. We sit there in the square in the Piazza Loggia in Brescia, in a cafe in the square, in the centre of the square, and the cars start the race and they drive around us. So we're sitting, with a beer at a table, and 3 feet in front of you is a Mercedes Gullwing coming past, sort of flat out. So as an event, we don't follow the whole event, because 1,000 miles would be too much for us. The drivers are exhausted when they get back. There's no way I'm going to try and take the guests 1,000 miles. So what we do is we pick and choose. So we do the day before the start. So we watch them through the scrutineering, and then we see them after the start, and then we catch up with them in Modena, normally on the day 2. And then we always see them coming back into Parma or Bologna on Friday evening. So that's the night before they finish the race on Saturday. But I'm always amazed, because it's now over 5 days. And I always say this to the guests on the first day when we're driving into Brescia. You think about this, okay? It's 5 days. Sterling Moss went around in 10 hours.
Yes. Yes.
And when you sit and think about that on open roads back in 1955, you can't comprehend it, really. It's his greatest drive, probably one of the greatest drives ever, for a good reason. And I'm not putting the guys down that do it now, because it's still hard work, but the reality is, when you look at it, I mean, 1,000, it's just phenomenal what he did back then,
Absolutely. And I think for all of us petrol heads, and I think I speak for all of our listeners, it is just that, well, but so-and-so drove this, or so-and-so sat here. Sterling Moss drove past here. It's all that for me, at least, as much as anything.
We went last year with overnight. Mercedes park all their cars in a multi-storey car park in Brescia, and in the following morning, 6 a.m, I dragged a lot of guests down there, and Elliot Moss was there driving the Gullwing that Sterling Moss had done his planning trips for the Mille Miglia in. And I mean, we're standing in a car park in Parma chatting to Sterling's son with the original car, and it just doesn't get any better than that, but I think that's the key to it for me,
I think you're right, and that's not all, because obviously one of the other bucket list events that you run tours to is the Le Mans Classic, which is, I mean, I think it should be on everybody's bucket list that you should do that, and that's changing, isn't it?
Yeah, they've always been biannual, and last year they announced that they would be running it every year. And there's two they've effectively split the dates into two, and you've got the Legend, which is this year, which is, I think it's 75 onwards or 76 onwards, and then the Classic one, which will be next year, which is sort of pre-75. And when they announced it, I was really nervous because the Le Mans Classic is a popular event, but when you make it annual instead of biannual, you don't have as much potential to sell the product effectively, if you want to call it that, because you've only got a year instead of 2 years. But also I was really nervous about this age category. 75, 76 onwards to 2010 is a much younger audience, and that's not my audience. And how wrong I was, because someone there knows what they're doing, because we've now almost sold out. We've got a couple of places left, and this is the biggest event we've done in terms of numbers of people. And I think that kind of points to what's happening with the classic car industry. I mean, you guys have been talking about it a lot. The demand now is almost shifting as the age group shifts to people in their 30s and 40s. And I've still got a huge audience, 50, 60, 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, but all of a sudden there's this influx of interest in that younger age group. So, I mean, it's going to be a fascinating event to see. Like I say, I'd like to, someone at Peter Auto is really on their game, because I didn't think this would work for 1 minute, and it's been really successful apparently.
And how can your guests enjoy the event? What sort of facilities do you have at Le Mans?
So we have a hotel. There's not many hotels in Le Mans, and they're not particularly good. So you need to be out of town. So we have a hotel about 40 minutes away, and we drive in every day. And we work with Peter Auto, the organisers, and we have we're in their what's called privilege package suite, which is at the end of the pit lane. So you know Le Mans very well. As they drive out the pit lane, there's a big building on the right hand side with a balcony, glass front, and that's the building we're in. And
oh wow, that's quite something.
Yeah, we're there for 3 days, and you get full hospitality for 3 days. You get paddock access, pit access, the full works. And also the other thing about it is the catering there. The one thing the French, I shouldn't say that. One of the good things the French do. One of the good things the French do really.
Stop digging.
One of the good things the French do really well is catering. The catering at that event, they do 1,000 people and they do silver service, and it is phenomenal. It's one of the best catering services anywhere in the world in terms of hospitality. So so you combine that with classic cars, Le Mans, it kind of sells itself, really, doesn't it?
You're listening to Historic Racing News. Paul Tarsi is talking to Matt Twynham from Twynhams Tours about our absolutely incredible contest.
Now, the third of the events that really is in your incredibly impressive portfolio is the Monaco Grand Prix Historique. It's an event for cars. They're on track all weekend. Bit on Friday, but the main weekend, Saturday and Sunday, there are qualifying sessions. There are races all day Sunday, and they're going right from the very beginning of the Monaco Grand Prix right up to the 80s, and a huge variety of stuff, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the earliest age group is 1920s. So you've got things like Bugatti Type 35s, things like that. And then the final age group is the 70s and 80s F1 cars. And they have qualifying all day Saturday, and they have racing all day Sunday. And genuinely, if you could pick a race, well, me personally, if I could pick a race to go to, I mean, I go to lots of stuff. I'm very lucky. If I could pick one race to watch, in a year, it would be the 70s and 80s F1 cars around Monaco on that Sunday afternoon, because you can't get anything better than listening to V8s, V10s and V12s, and the sound reverberates around the Principality as well, because you're so closed in. It's just the best race. It really is, I mean, I love Goodwood, I love all these other places, but one race, that's the one,
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when I was doing TV commentary at Monaco Historique, and the director said to me, for this last race, would you cover the pit lane? So that was the 80s cars in the pit lane.
Could you hear anything?
Hey, what?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just incredible. And it's something which your guests just have the very best time, don't you? You're running tours to the event.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
We do a tour package, which is 3 nights, where we include everything. We don't do flights, but we include everything from the airport onwards. And so we've got a hotel just outside St Paul de Vence, outside Nice, really nice boutique hotel. And we go into Monaco on Saturday. We've got a hospitality suite that overlooks the first corner. So we literally look down into the cockpit of the cars on the first corner. So you can see the start line, you can see up the hill to Casino Square, you can see out of the end of the chicane at the end of the tunnel around the swimming pool. So we do a 4-day hospitality on Saturday, and then on Sunday we fly in by helicopter, which is always a fantastic experience. Coming into Monaco, if you come in by yacht or by helicopter, it's that iconic view of the harbour. It really is. And then we've got hospitality all day on the Sunday. So we do 2 packages. We do a tour package, which is all inclusive with hotels and everything. And then we also just do hospitality. So you can come along for the 2 days for the weekend and enjoy everything about the hospitality with my tour guests as well. In the same building, same facilities, everything. Yeah, all the same.
And which brings me very, very neatly into your incredibly generous prize, which you've offered to exclusively to listeners and readers of Historic Racing News, both on this podcast and on our social media channels. And just tell us what the prize is.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give away 2 VIP packages to the Monaco Historique, and so you would need to make your own way to Monaco. You fly into Nice; it's very easy, and arrange some sort of apartment or hotel or whatever you want. There's thousands of options, and then you'll have 2 days exclusive hospitality in our suite with us. Food, drink, champagne, full works, and 2 days VIP watching the historic racing, the best, one of the best historic race meetings in the world, really. So that's the competition prize.
That is amazing, Matt, and thank you so much for doing that, because that's just unbelievably good.
Oh, and they might get to meet you, Paul, as well at some point.
Oh, don't say that. Nobody likes that.
I'll throw that in.
But,
or Jim, or Jim.
Yeah, Jim. Jim and I will both be there, so we'll look forward to that. But it's just something which is very special, and thank you for that. Now, the question, ladies and gentlemen, is who won the first ever Monaco Grand Prix? And what make of car were they driving? Who won the first ever Monaco Grand Prix? And what make of car were they driving? You can send your entries by email to matthew@twynhamstours.co.uk. Details of all of this will be on our Facebook page, on the Historic Racing News Facebook page. So please go on there if you'd like to, but get those entries in, because entries close on the 11th of March.
And also, if anybody wants to, Paul, they can enter via, if they just fill in the contact form on the website. So they go onto our website, click on the contact form and fill in there as well, just as another option for them if they want to.
Thank you, Matt. That's great. And of course, terms and conditions apply and are available on request. So do that. But if you are already planning to go to Monaco, or if you fancy just doing the trip, it's something imperative to do. And Matt, you said about just flying to Nice. I mean, the train service that runs along the coast is amazing. You just fly to Nice, get yourself to Nice railway station, and it'll take you right into the railway station in the middle of Monaco. And I have to say, the railway station at Monaco is unbelievable, because I mean that it's marble and gold.
Yeah. Sorry, go on. I was going to say, just as importantly, that the exit to the Monaco train station is right next to our apartment. So you walk out the door and it's in front of you. That's the other thing. Yeah, it's perfect location. Yeah,
fabulous. And I mean, when the first time that my wife Lisa and I went, that we got out of the train and did those, because the trains come in at the top of the mountain, and you have to come all the way down the escalators, and they popped out at the bottom at Saint-Devote, right where you're talking about. And this unbelievably good-looking policeman was standing there in his white uniform. And, I think that if ever Lisa was tempted to commit a crime, it was at that very moment. So please, ladies and gentlemen, do get your entries in. Do it now. The question is not over arduous, because we'd love to see you there, and we'd love to be part of that. Yes, we'll... Jim and I will be there flying the flag for Historic Racing News, but if you're lucky enough to be a winner, you don't have to come and talk to us. But we'd love to do that. Matt, thank you so much for this brilliant prize.
Yeah,
we're going to fly the flag, and I hope you're going to come and talk about the lucky winners on our next show.
Yeah, with pleasure. Yeah, I look forward to meeting them in Monaco, and I'll also look forward to coming along and chatting about the event as well. Yeah, and see you there at some point.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Matt, thank you very much indeed.
You're listening to Historic Racing News, where motorsport's history lives.
Well, that brings to an end the first half of the show, but don't go away, because we'll be back with more of our Race Retro interviews, news from our Facebook page, and the latest videos on our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles.
You're listening to Historic Racing News, a copyrighted presentation of Historic Racing News in association with White Squirrel Studios. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or usage without the expressed written permission of Historic Racing News is strictly prohibited.